I think that whenever you are dealing with a confrontational situation, whenever you are dealing with whether it's a confrontation between two employees in your office or whether a client wants to discuss something with you that they're unhappy about, if you can dig deep and find a way to relate to that client, to find a situation that in your past is relatable to what they are telling you, that will go leaps and bounds further to resolving that problem than just sitting there and not participating in the conversation. Hey, y'all, you're listening to The Designer Within, episode number 19. I'm John McClain, and welcome to the Designer Within podcast, the business-minded podcast created for creative entrepreneurs by a creative entrepreneur. That's me. I know firsthand the challenges, but also the victories that can come with our careers. And I'm here to sip and spill the tea with you. It's time to dive deep within yourself and redesign your own business and your life from the inside out. Together, we will uncover secrets and share valuable insights. So prepare for a transformative experience, my friend, because it's time to unleash the designer within. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Designer Within podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube, I'm trying out something new and going to be recording a video portion of my episodes. If you are listening, I should say, to it on the regular method on your iPhone or whatever method you use, you can continue to do that the same way. So wherever you're finding me, I just want to welcome you. So today's episode is going to be talking about confrontation. And I know confrontation is not something that we all love to talk about. And more so than confrontation, I want to talk about how we communicate, how we can verbally communicate, how we can communicate with our facial expressions, with our body language, all of those things. And I'm definitely not an expert on this, but I know what I know, and I know what I've learned over the years. And I do think that there are some things that you can look out for when you are communicating with your clients, when you are communicating even with your team members. There are certain things and certain ways that you can handle a situation. So I just wanted to talk about communication and how to do that effectively, as well as how to handle those situations when conflict does arise, because we all know that conflict does arise. And being in the design industry, we, of course, are a visual element. We bring all of the visual components to a room. But more than that, I wanted to just remind us all that we also bring our emotional components to a space, and we solve emotional issues for clients. So for instance, I've spoken before about how design is an emotional decision. Some people value things more than others. Some people will spend more money on something than some other people. But the emotional attachment, the emotional decision is, I feel, really critical to finding out exactly what your clients need. So for instance, if you're doing a questionnaire and you're asking your client all of these questions, on the questionnaire, you're not getting those nonverbal cues that they could be giving to you if you did this in person. So think about going to a client's home and perhaps asking them some of these questions in person. What we like to do is we do send out a very short questionnaire for our discovery call. But for the questionnaire that we use for our actual in-home consultations, it's a bit more in-depth. It has a lot more questions on it, and it has a lot more things that I really want to know about the client. And as the client is answering those to you verbally, you can also take nonverbal cues from them to find out what they might be meaning underneath the surface. I always like to remind clients that you are not having a home designed for your neighbor, for your friends. You're not trying to compete with a television show. This is your house and you have to love it. And the answers that you give us to these questions and how you answer these questions is really going to start the process of our design. So I want the client to be honest. I want the client to be straightforward. And I want them to let us know exactly what they're looking for. But more importantly, I want to know why they're asking for this. Why are they looking for this solution to the problem? You know, I've mentioned before that we've had clients and they have wanted a larger kitchen. And we, on the surface, might just think, oh, the client wants a larger kitchen because they just want a larger kitchen. But if you dive a little bit deeper and ask a few more questions or notice a few more things that are happening around you, you're going to see that maybe that larger kitchen is there to bring the family together. So maybe all of the kids are having dinner in their rooms, and the mom or the spouse or whomever wants the children to eat with them in the kitchen. So seating is very important to them. So I think finding out that why is really just a key component in being a good designer and really following through with what we're going to give the client. This happened to me once, and I will say that it was an eye-opening experience to see how some of the children in this situation were treating their parents. So it wasn't so much like this, 1950s sitcom family. It was very eye-opening to see exactly how some of the kids were treating their parents. And so I understood what the parents were looking for when it came to designing their home and when it came to really making a space that would bring the family together. And that was the core component of everything that we designed. And we designed a lot of spaces in the home that were family oriented based upon that. So lots of spaces where the family could gather as a unit versus a just a space where there was, privacy and there was those spaces where the family could do things separately, but the basis of our design was designed around the fact that I knew that the family wanted to spend more time together and that they needed to spend more time together. And that was the root of everything that we designed. I want to start off by talking about being a chameleon. And I know that might sound a little negative or a little strange to some of you, but I do find if you are a chameleon of sorts and you are able to speak with your clients, speak with your vendors, speak with your team members in a way that they can relate to, then you have the ability to find out what information you're needing to find out. So if it is resolving a problem and you are able to understand how that client communicates and understand that they want to be heard in a certain way, then you can adjust your conversation and your tone to a way that they can relate to and a way that they're actually hearing versus a non-empathetic way of speaking with someone. And on the subject of empathy, I do want to touch upon that. I think that whenever you are dealing with a confrontational situation, whenever you are dealing with whether it's a confrontation between two employees in your office, or whether a client wants to discuss something with you that they're unhappy about, if you can dig deep and find a way to relate to that client, to find a situation that in your past is relatable to what they are telling you, that will go leaps and bounds further to resolving that problem than just sitting there and not participating in the conversation. So I do find that with life experience and with the older you get, I'm 48, so the older I get, the more things I learn and the more experiences I have. And if you are a new designer and you're just starting out, rest assured, you will have those experiences. And, there are those old souls out there, as I call them, who my gosh, they could be, in their 20s, but they have conversations with you as if they've experienced so much in life. But I do love speaking with people like that, and I do feel like I was an old soul as well, when I was younger, and I always said there was like an old Indian lady living inside of me, just giving out information and reacting to things in ways, because sometimes I would say things that would honestly surprise myself, and I didn't really know where they came from. But I think it's all about your environment, of course, and that shapes you to be who you are, and your past experiences, your family, your spouse, whomever, those things are inherent to you. And if you draw on those life experiences and just help the person that you're speaking with understand that you might not have had the exact situation, but you do have a situation that is relatable to them. And this doesn't mean, by the way, to interrupt their conversations or to, stop them just because you have a wonderful thought. Listening, there's a reason we have two ears and one mouth. You need to listen double and speak less. So listen intently, and when they do come up for air and when they do find a spot to take a breather, that is when you can bring in your experiences and how to best solve the problem. I actually have a systematic way that I handle confrontation or the way that I handle issues or any sort of problem. I like to become robotic, and I don't mean that in a sense that I pull away. I mean that because I like to remove all of my emotions from the situation. I like to remove any sort of preconceived feelings that I have. I want to remove my ego. And by doing that, I'm on Switzerland. I'm on neutral ground. And I am just receiving the information as a third party. I'm not directly involved in that, even if I am directly involved in that. And I think if you just take a minute and take a breather from that situation before it can get too heated and before it can get into overdrive, and remove yourself from that if possible. And if a client is having a confrontation with me or they bring up something that is a little testy, I like to have them either address this later. We can take this and address this later once we've had time to really think about it, or once I can find time to find the facts about it. You don't have to solve that problem right then and there. You can pull away and say, I don't have the best answer for you right now, but I will get you an answer tomorrow. And then if you give them a definitive time frame, so in 24 hours or by tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'm going to give you a call and we're going to discuss this. That will go farther than if you are just trying to do a little song and dance and come up with a solution on the fly. It never ever works. I like to have facts, and I like to be in the right mindset when I am dealing with a client situation or an employee situation or a vendor situation. As y'all know, interior design is not one-sided, and there's not one level of issues that could happen. We have issues happening among everything. So there are testy moments that happen with vendors and with other people, that tradespeople, people that you're involved with. But it's about how you handle that situation. And anytime you come into a situation and you are throwing fire back on the fire and fueling the flames, it's never going to go anywhere. So I like to diffuse that as much as possible and really just remove, again, any emotional attachment that I have to it, any emotional involvement, and know that what that person is telling me is valid and that I need to listen to them. Now, I will try to remove a confrontational situation to a more private area. So as a for instance, if you are having a moment with someone, and it could be a tradesperson, a general contractor, a client, whomever, and there are lots of people in the room, I feel that this grandstanding, this sort of showmanship does come into play. So I like to remove those two components. So if a client needs to speak with me or a general contractor needs to speak with me, I want to do that in a private area. I don't want to do that in front of everyone in the room, because then there becomes another aspect that that person has to sort of portray, which is, oh, I have to not only say what my issue is, there's 6 other people watching me and I have to say it in a certain way, or maybe I'm going to be more angry because there's an audience of people watching me. So I really do like to remove the confrontation from the space where it's happening. So if you are having, let's say, an issue with a primary bathroom, and that is where the problem is, of course, there are components that you need to speak about in that room, but to really dive deeper into the problem, I like to physically remove myself and the other person from that space so that we can have a easy going conversation, and that sort of trigger moment is not right there in front of us. And then we can speak intelligently about it. I also like to, if I can, as I said, remove myself totally from that situation and take time to take a breath. I know a lot of times we get an irritating email from someone, or it could be an angry email, or it could be, if you are the person who texts. We don't text within my company, but if you are a person who does text with your clients, then you could possibly get an angry text. If we do a knee-jerk reaction and reply to that right away with all of the emotions that we're wearing on our sleeve, that is never going to serve anyone. So I like to take a breath, pull myself away. If I can pull myself away for overnight, even better, because I find that reset of emotions, that reset of feelings and thoughts is so critical to getting the best outcome from that. So if you can remove yourself at least for an hour, understand sometimes if you're in front of a client in their home, you necessarily can't do that. But I do think that to diffuse that situation better, you need to come into it with a clear mindset and a clear mind and a clear heart, and remove the ego, remove the emotions, and come at it from a very clear space. And for me personally, I like to do that as an overnight situation and then come back the next day. And it's amazing what your brain can do in those overnight hours. When you're not wholly focused on something, you wake up with the best ideas and the best solutions to the problem. And it could be something that you would have never thought of in the heat of the moment. But because you've had time to really digest it, it is going to allow you to solve the problem for the best of both parties. Okay, let's talk about body language and how body language influences not only what is being said, but also the perception of what is being said. And I was just having this conversation actually with a body language expert, my friend Jess Ponce, and it is intriguing to me the importance of body language. But what we were discussing and what we were talking about is how some body language is offensive or can turn off some people, and some other body languages doesn't even affect the person that they're speaking with. So I encourage you to ask yourself, what is your perception of body language and how that does affect your conversation? So if someone has their arms crossed, for instance, is that an automatic turnoff for you? Does that mean that that person is not interested in what you're saying? Or does it just mean that they're intently listening to what you're saying? For me, it's not personally a turnoff when someone has their arms crossed. I know that some people go deep into conversation and they are listening to me even though they have their arms crossed. So it doesn't necessarily mean for me that it is a non-negotiable when a conversation is happening if that person has their arms crossed. So other things that do annoy me are when someone is just so preoccupied. So the preoccupation is if you're speaking with someone and let's say it's a video call, for instance, which we do a lot of these days, and the other person is looking to the left and looking to the right, or, they are writing something down constantly and it's not about what you're discussing. That is annoying to me. And that is a turnoff when it comes to a two-way street of a conversation. I also think that we need to ask ourselves what our faces are showing to other people. If you're listening intently and if your intent listening face is this this resting bitch face, this annoying RBF, then you need to kind of check yourself and bring yourself back to that moment. But I want you to just ask yourself and to always think about what you are portraying to the other person. Do you give off that vibe that you are listening? Do you physically show them that you are listening? Are you making eye contact? And I also think that eye contact is a bit overrated in its fullest sense. So I don't think that you have to stare someone directly in the eye for, the entire 30 minutes that you're having this conversation. Those breaks in eye contact do help a bit. So if you have a paper that you're looking at, for instance, and you're making a presentation, it's okay to look down at that paper and point to that paper or point to that swatch of fabric or point to that wallpaper or that tile, whatever. That's okay. I think those little moments of breaking up the physicality of conversations are nice. And I think that it does give the other person a little bit of a break when it comes to them listening to you. So if you think about when you're doing presentations as an interior designer and you have all of these things put out on the table in front of you and you're showing them to the client, you don't have to stare the client in the eye when you're talking about this piece. Those little moments of breaking eye contact are totally fine. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to stare out the window longingly thinking about your Starbucks at 3:00 in the afternoon when you really want it. No, it does mean that you can take a break from that, but it does not mean to constantly avoid the other person. So think about how those nonverbal reactions and those nonverbal communications are happening to you. And if you need to record yourself, or if you need to go back and record yourself or watch a recording that you did with a client or with a vendor, or if someone's doing a presentation to you, such as an outside vendor, how are you reacting to them and how are you communicating with them non-verbally? It's really important. And it can be hard, I know, to watch yourself on camera or to listen to yourself on a recording or to whatever, but you just have to do it because it's going to make you better. It's going to make you better for the next situation. And you might even see yourself in a way that other people are seeing you, but you didn't even know that you were coming across or portraying yourself as. And you might be surprised and you might want to figure out a way to change that. Really analyze yourself and think about the ways that you are coming across to other people and try to do that in the most positive, reinforcing, understanding way possible. Well, I mentioned being a chameleon of sorts earlier and drawing on your past experiences to better communicate with people. And I like to have this sort of reservoir, if you will, of experiences in my life. So when something happens to me that I feel could be relatable to someone else, or there could be another interpretation of that situation that could help other people, I write it down. I put it in my phone and I take note of it. I mean, if it's a big situation, like you can go back and listen to episode 1 of this podcast. And if you haven't heard that one, it is a big, big, big eye-opening experience that I had when I first started my company. But those situations, I don't have to write down. They are life or death. They are literally the point of losing everything, to growing my company to where it is now. But if it's those smaller moments, if it's a conversation that you have with someone or just any sort of interaction that you have that you feel could be relatable to other people, store those somewhere and write those down. Write what the situation was and who it was with and what you learned from it and what the resolution was. And I think that by analyzing, again, those past moments in our lives that were pivotal to making us who we are, and it doesn't have to be, by the way, a positive outcome. It could be a negative outcome that you don't want to happen again. So whatever is happening to you in your life, you do have these experiences to draw on. And by being that chameleon and being able to sort of relay yourself to other people is important. For instance, if you're speaking to your audience on social media and you're on Instagram and you are speaking to a certain demographic, I've spoken before about having that ideal client and having that person that you are speaking to. And if you really know that person, you know what to say and you know how to say it and you know what they are going to react to, just as the reason that you guys are listening to this podcast now. I hopefully am saying things to you that you have either thought before or that you wanted to know more about. But I know in my head, I have this sort of avatar of a person that I'm speaking with, and that is you listening. So that is helping me to, say the right things, to relay the information to you in a way that I know that you will receive. So think about that as you are speaking to your audience, and that could be your audience on social media. That could be your audience on the phone. If it is a discovery call and someone is calling your office, you want to be sure that you are portraying that professional and knowledgeable, but also personable image of yourself and your company, because those first moments are very critical to, of course, establishing a longer term relationship. Just think about how you are portraying yourself to people and how you are sort of changing your message and changing your tone, if you will, to each different audiences. You're going to speak to an existing client a little differently than you're going to speak with a prospect, right? There's things that that person needs to know that the other person doesn't. So think about who your audience is, and it could be an audience of your team members. It could be your vendors. There are ways that you can engage with that person in a positive way, but in a way that they understand. And that's where the empathy, that's where the drawing upon your past situation comes into play. And that is really just by being your true self, you're also going to be more engaging. I've talked about this before. Defining your own success is such a big part of what I teach to my students, what I teach to myself. And I have to remind myself daily that I'm not put on this planet to compete with someone else. I'm put here to be my own person. And my level of success is something totally different, or it could be, I should say, totally different than something for someone else. So I have achieved a lot of great things, but that doesn't mean that somebody else should want to achieve those same things as well. So just as having that different perception about what success means to me, I want you to also have that different perception about how you can relate to other people and find that common ground that that person needs. If it is that your client really wants to impress their neighbors or impress their colleagues or whatever with their home, that's what they value and that's important to them. So play upon that. Speak in that manner with them, get them to that conclusion, get them to that final result, and have no emotional attachments to it at all. You don't have to be in the same mindset as they are when it comes to those things, but you know what they're looking for. And our job as a designer is to solve the problem for our clients in the most efficient way that is going to make them happy. If we dig a little bit deeper and just find the why behind the reason that they're asking you to do something, then you will get to the right answer. We spend a lot of time on the upfront portion of our client onboarding with my company to really think about what is that client needing? What are they asking for? Why do they like this certain room? And by the way, it could just be that they like one component of that room. So maybe they like one lamp or one table or one sofa, and they show you an entire room. But if you don't dig a little deeper under the surface and find out the reason that they're showing you that image, you could think that you were going to design a room around this entire style. And this happened to me early on as a young designer. I just assumed that the client was showing me a room and they liked the entire room. So quickly realized no, they only wanted the faucet on that particular vanity in that room. So I encourage you to ask the why behind why the client is showing you something that they are enjoying. That also goes into confrontations and it goes into any sort of negative components too, ask the why. Find out the why. Why is it important for them to change something? Why is it important for them to want something more than what you're showing them? Find out the reasoning behind it. It could surprise you, and it could set the wheels in motion to solve problems down the road before they happen again. If you know that a client wants to design in a certain way to make their kids happier or to bring them all together, or maybe their husband is wanting to spend some time working in certain part of the house, so you make that area a little more workable for them, put a little desk area, that sort of thing. But you wouldn't have known that had you not asked. So I encourage you to ask, to dig deeper, and to find the why behind your client's reasoning for what they're wanting. As a recap today, I just want to wrap things up by reminding you how important communication is, how important quality communication is, and to ask yourself what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, review your past communications, record those conversations, ask your team, ask your colleagues how you are coming across in meetings, how you are coming across in moments of confrontation and difficulties, and if there are ways that you can improve that. And I can guarantee you there are. I took a hard look at myself in the past and thought, wow, I really could do a lot better than that. So just by following my own process for confrontations and for communications, I have found a way that works for me. My way may not work for you, but I can tell you, just by pulling myself away, extracting myself from the moment, trying to find a way to really let everything resonate with me before I come up with a quote unquote answer to the problem or a solution to the problem, has served me well. I also like to, again, pull a client away if it's a confrontation, pull an employee away, and have a one-on-one conversation with them privately in a separate area from where that issue occurred. And that is also a great way to diffuse that situation. Past experiences are critical, as I said, to helping the other party understand that you are empathetically listening and empathetically responding to what they're saying. That also will take you leaps and bounds beyond a typical conversation if the person knows that you are engaged and that you are listening to them. So find your own way to think about communication, find out what works for you. Think about ways that you communicate with your social media. Think about ways that you communicate with your team. Think about ways that you communicate with clients and how that is different from the way that you communicate with your friends and family. There is a difference, but there's also an underlying tone to that. And think about also those nonverbal cues of communication. Are you looking away? Do you look like you're unhappy? Do you have a disgruntled look on your face? One thing I like to do is, I'm a touchy person, and anyone who knows me knows that I am. So I will touch someone on the shoulder, on the arm, and it is just my way of saying, I'm here, I understand, I hear what you're saying. And it's nothing that I actually did intentionally. It just is who I am as a person. But that little nonverbal communication, that nonverbal cue, that little just a touch on the shoulder, is something that has helped me to disengage situations and to really take the anger out of the confrontation that could be happening. Now, I know in these days we have to watch where we touch people and all of those things, but I can guarantee you, if I've ever touched you on the shoulder or on the elbow, it's nothing that is a sexual nature. It is just me telling you that I hear you and I understand you and am receiving what you're saying. So I want you to ask yourself what you're doing right again and what you're doing wrong with your communication, and find the method that works for you. I hope some of these tips today have helped you to not only think about your communication and your style of communication, but also to maybe enhance that and grow upon it. And you will have yourself communicating even better than you are now if you just take some time to hone those skills. And it will help you close those deals. It will help you solve those problems. It will help you resolve issues with team members and clients. And it will just make you a better person all around, to know that your communication style is being heard and being received. So that is it, my friends. I thank you for listening today. This has been the Designer Within podcast. I encourage you to follow me every week on the podcast so you can learn more. But also, if you have things that you want to know about, please, on YouTube, leave them in the comments below. Or if you are listening to this on your Apple Podcasts or your Spotify or wherever, please send me a DM or an email. I would love to hear your comments about what you would like to hear about on the podcast, and to find out what I can help better do to serve you. So that is it. I will see you next time. And thank you so much. Keep learning, keep growing, and keep designing, my friend. Thanks for sticking with me to the end of the Designer Within podcast. It means the world to me. If you're ready to dive deeper into the topics that we've discussed here, be sure to check out my brand new 6-week online coaching and courses program, Design Success Academy. The Design Success Academy is open right now in my beta launch program. You can join the Academy for 50% off, but only until November 19th. After that date, it will increase to the regular price, and the next enrollment will be in January. So if you want to be a part of helping me shape this new course, helping me put things into the course that are important to you as a designer, things that you want to know, please consider joining the beta course for my Design Success Academy. The Design Success Academy is a 6-week program where you will learn things such as my entire project journey. Every single process that I use within my company will be taught to you inside this program. I will also teach you how to choose and price your services in your own design firm. On top of that, you will learn self-marketing success, my favorite ways to market and grow your company. We are going to discuss teams, trades, and vendors. I will be showing you my favorite technology that I use every single day in my company, as well as the leadership mindset that you need to start, run, and grow your boutique design firm. Find out more at designsuccessacademy.com.